Good morning, guys. Welcome to day 137 until I'm a YouTube millionaire. And for this video, we're going to do a review of Profiles in Courage by John F. Kennedy. Now, this book was written quite a while ago, obviously, because John F. Kennedy passed away several years ago. So, perhaps some of the things are not necessarily up to date in it, but really what it is kind of a history lesson, because you're going through the lives of basically like 8 people that John F. Kennedy saw in United States politics as courageous individuals. Now, the way he defines courage is not necessarily something that's going to lead you to be victorious in your political pursuits or whatever your pursuits are, but are standing up for your morals, your convictions, in the face of whatever inertia you need to overcome. So what that means is somebody like Daniel Webster might be really horrible with their money and rather unsavory of an individual in that regard. He nevertheless will stand up for something that needs to be stood up for in politics. Now, like I've said many a time, it's scarcely going to be the case where you remember point for point, verbatim, everything that you read, hear, see, what have you. So, reading a book like this, as with any historical document, is a means by which you broaden your perspective to improve your subconscious intuition for your decision making. He brings up the point of Gresham's law. Gresham's law of politics. And Gresham's law, what that is the tendency for money of lower intrinsic value to circulate more freely than money of higher intrinsic value, or equal or nominal value. In other words, this same type of thing happens with politicians. They'll circulate in and out based upon low value. But there were also some other important points that I think John F. Kennedy didn't bring up because he just didn't know of them. One of them is the Lindy effect. The Lindy effect, basically what that is, it states that the longer something has been around, been in existence, the longer still it will be in existence. So, let's look at Bitcoin, for instance. Bitcoin's been around since 2008. That's a good 17 years. Because it's existed for 17 years, the likelihood of it collapsing in a singular year is very low. It's going to be around perhaps for several more decades, maybe even centuries, because it's lasted this long. The same thing happens with politicians, governments, even, just people in general. So, a lot of the profiles that he discusses are individuals that were politicians during the Civil War era. And one of them, I actually have it written right here, that Daniel Webster individual, who wasn't necessarily the best person in the world, basically gave time for the Lindy effect to take effect for the United States. If the Civil War in the United States were perhaps to happen 10 years prior, the United States wasn't old enough for it to survive that kind of calamity. It would have broken up into several different states, several different countries. Perhaps Texas would have become its own country, the Confederacy would have remained its own country, the northern states would have remained their own country. It wouldn't have been able to have been reunified by a central authority. But because Daniel Webster he aided in the delay by great compromise with individuals like Henry Clay and others, they gave it time. Hindsight is 20/20, and scarcely could any one of these individuals have known what the future consequences would have been of the actions they were taking in the present. But a few things that you can know, the kernels of truth. Life is better than death. To give time for greater awareness is better than to make brash decisions, and things of that nature. Stability, generally speaking, is better than chaos. Slavery is bad. Freedom is good. Sound money, and actually this is somebody by the name of Lamar, a politician by the name of Lamar, Cincinnatus, blah, blah, blah. It's a big old fat name. I forget exactly what it was, but, and again, I'm not going to remember the exact details. He was a politician that was trying to keep sound money and keep it as a singular currency. Gold. He didn't want to add silver into the mix. It's like basic silver bill or something to that effect. I can't remember exactly what it was called. But hindsight's 20/20. You don't know these things in the present. And I look back on this and all the things that these individuals did to keep enough stability for the United States to get where it is now was hugely important. They held it together long enough to where now you and I live in the wealthiest country in the history of the planet. Even with the central banks and dark forces behind the scenes trying to turn us into slaves in a different sense, not like cotton-picking slaves, but a different kind of slave. Even with all that, we've managed to keep things together well enough up to this point to where we live in the greatest affluence we ever have. I'm talking to you on a piece of technology that's a billion times more powerful than the technology that got us to go to the surface of the moon back in 1969. And 69 years before that, we had just come around to inventing the engine, and we were getting ready to build cars, and we were a few years off from making airplanes. We went from barely being able to fly to landing on the surface of the moon in 69 years-ish, right around there. And now we're getting ready, we're setting out to go and colonize Mars. Even with all these dark forces behind the scenes trying to stop us, and it takes a wizened individual, why you read books like this, to figure that stuff out. We've managed to push forward the line this much. So if for nothing else than to give yourself a broader perspective, I strongly recommend you read this book. It's a good one. Really, really good information in it. When you do things that are courageous, when you do things that you are convicted by, that are going to make a difference, just as Winston Churchill said, and this is actually Victor Hugo, I think, was the first person who said it. You have enemies. Good. It means you stood for something at some point in your life. He also talks about certain politicians that basically executed the knife's edge of keeping us right on the precipice between chaos and stability. And the closer you are to that line, the black and the white, the faster your growth is. And if we want to outpace the evil in this world, unfortunately, we need to be as close to that line as we possibly can be. because the enemy is always looking for a way to take us down. So I strongly recommend you read this book. It was very good. All right. That's it for today. Let me know what you think, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Love y'all. Peace.